Hi, everyone.
Hi, Court.
Hello, and
Hey
welcome,
girl.
Rachel. Hey, I'm so excited to have you here with us. And just for our listeners and our viewers, we have Rachel Barbaro here with us today. And I wanted to give everybody a bit of background about Rachel. So, Rachel is an ICF-certified leadership coach, and she helps through coaching and mindfulness practices organizations build resilient leadership teams, foster authentic DEI, and elevate communication and relationships. Rachel's clients consistently say, and I can attest to this from having attended one of your recent joy activation online workshops, but Rachel's clients consistently say they leave each session feeling empowered with a fresh perspective, new awareness, and a clear, accountable plan. During her 10 years experience as a senior leader, Rachel discovered the transformative power of somatic coaching, which we'll dive into a bit today, and pursued training and accreditation. She lives in Toronto, Canada, with her family. So, with a great amount of happiness, excitement, and honor, I welcome you, Rachel, to our episode of Conscious Corner.
Thank you,
So,
Courtney.
you're so welcome. So I should probably let everyone know we met through LinkedIn, right? And
Totally.
we instantaneously I we had a Zoom meeting, and I remember just hanging out and being like, this woman's cool. Like, I have so much I can learn from her, but just in terms of like the hang factor, I sat in Rittenhouse Square Park. It was a nice summer or early fall day, and we had so much in common from the
Mm.
work that we do, our personal practice, mindfulness practice, and being a professional and juggling, just as Annie and I often say, juggling in the demands of being a mom and a wife. So I can continue talking to you for hours on end, but let's begin by just sharing with our audience how you came into mindfulness and coaching.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Annie, for that warm introduction. I'm so thrilled to be here today. I also felt the same way about you, Courtney. It was a crush immediately. I think we're boy moms. We're both type A, and we have so much in common, and we both are avid meditators, even though we have really busy home lives and kids. And I think it was such a gift for me to connect with somebody who had so much in common it was like ding, 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 like all the check marks. Um, I got into coaching and about 10 years ago. So I'll kind of give you the coaching story quickly and then the mindfulness story. So I got into coaching about 10 years ago. I've had a wonderful career over 2 decades as a public servant, both in BC and in Ontario, in the energy sector and the hydro sector, and loved what I did. Was leading a team for the last 10 years before I left, leading a pretty big team at a pretty big leadership role. But about 6 or 7 years ago, I was starting to experience some sensations of burnout and just anxiety and just holding myself back. And the sensation when you're like, I hear this from my clients, you know more is possible. You're like, something else is possible. More is possible than this experience that I'm having right now. So I sought out a coach and I did 6 months of really intense coaching with a leadership coach based out of the US. And then I was hooked. It was like I had the Kool-Aid. I experienced the transformation. Um, the piece that really stuck with me and still sticks with me and really influences my coaching business today is somatic coaching. I think our minds can get so exhausted, particularly as women, if we're in high performing roles. I coach a lot of executives, founders, female lawyers, females in big professional roles. The mind can get exhausted in terms of like cognitive overload. And so mapping the sensations that we have in the body, which is really essentially what somatic coaching is, and getting curious, getting underneath those sensations, what's attached to it, what's the need. It's really wonderful and it's really refreshing. It's a whole new way to integrate your mind and your body. So I pursued training. And then for years, I sort of did my training and was sort of coaching on the side. I was coaching in-house within my organization, acquiring my hours. And then by the end, I was like waking up at 4 a.m. to do my work so that I could coach for 2 hours a couple days during the week in the afternoon. And then push just came to shove, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I loved leadership, but I'm meant to be coaching. So I'm coaching, I'm facilitating, and I'm also doing some consulting and a little bit of leadership on the side. So that's how I got into it. And then mindfulness. again, similar experience. And I share very openly. I share my journey with like such openness and vulnerability because I believe that's what we have to do as humans and we need more of it. So I was probably in my late 20s, had everything I thought I wanted, had bought my first house, had just gotten married, was in a pretty big job politically. I think I had a BlackBerry, so like that's dating me in terms of the era. And I was struck with anxiety. Like I was just anxious all the time. And so I met with a therapist and I assumed I was going to get, some meds or some pills or something. And she looked at me and she was like, "Have you ever tried mindfulness-based stress reduction?" And somebody named John Kabat-Zinn, and I'm gonna give you a book to read, and I want you to try to cultivate a meditation practice and come to me in 6 months and tell me how it's going. And the first year of meditating, so I was, oh man, over 13, 14 years ago. The first year of meditating, I hated it. Every practice was hard. And then you fast forward through the years and it just changes you. Like, John Kabat-Zinn says, meditate for a few years and then come tell me how it is. And it really is the truth. So I came to both coaching and mindfulness really like, you know, in tears on my knees, like needing a different path and needing more tools and a new modality. And such a privilege now for me to do it in my work and integrate it into my work as a coach.
Wow, what a story. I find similarities in my journey, but I love how you tell, obviously that was a quick, sort of blurb, right? We could talk for hours,
Mhm.
but I love how you said vulnerability and authenticity and, all those words that are kind of thrown around, but not always practiced.
Yeah.
And I really try to be that coach as well. I'm not ICF certified. That's really awesome that you are. Just the way things happen. And when I did it in my life, it just didn't make sense once my business started going.
Yeah.
I didn't have the time or financially it wasn't working. But I love that you are, and that's amazing. And a lot of corporations want to hear that and see that. So that's great for you.
Yeah.
With the way that you're kind of like different than, that executive coach that's like, let's just talk about like professional development. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not who I
Yeah.
am, right? It's like not who I am. And I feel like you do both. And what I always say about
Yeah.
my business is I really mesh personal and professional development because these people
Yeah.
that I'm coaching, like you, are not just CEOs and CSOs and CTOs. They are people with lives and partners and, kids and, side hustles and relationship problems and communication problems. It's not just all about how you have executive presence in a boardroom. There's way more to
Totally.
life, right? And they, as you do know, like they lose themselves. They lose themselves. And that's a lot about what I coach. So I can so appreciate what you've done and how you made that shift and how you felt. What else resonated with me? How you felt like there's more. I so felt that in 2020. I
Totally.
was like, before COVID started, I was like, I have like a calling. What I'm doing in corporate right now is not, yeah. It was a total, actually 2018, it was not working. So that's when I decided to go for my master's. But anyway, point being, I know that feeling of just like,
Mm.
something else this is not fulfilling enough. Like, and I remember that like day. So that's pretty cool for you.
Ooh. I love that. We got to listen to those like those cravings, those hungers of like I need something else. Like this is not lighting me up. And then even if we don't know where the path's going to lead. Like I remember I was getting like osteopath or Reiki or something years ago, right when I was starting to make the transition. And I said to the woman who was working on me in her yurt in the forest, we were on holiday and it was just like this magical aligned thing where like she had an appointment free. So I'm getting Reiki and like osteopathy done in this yurt in the forest. And I was like, I can't believe this memory's coming back. And I was like, I'm trying to figure out what I should do and what should I do next. Like I have this great job with this great pension and this great salary and this stability. And I have the privilege of leading this big team and I have an assistant and like da 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 da
How
da.
can I leave that? Right.
But it's not feeding me. And she told me, she's like, just follow the tea lights. Just follow the tea lights. Like there's gonna be these little lights and just keep following the tea lights. And like, oh, I'm almost gonna get emotional. I remember that moment and like she was right. And I love what you say, Annie, about the personal and the professional. I think that's why COVID was so wildly dysregulating for all of us, me included. My kids were 2 and 5 at the time. We often compartmentalize ourselves and we're like, here's my professional self, here's my personal self. And when I coach people, I literally do that. And then I'm like, this is how I coach. We bring all of ourselves.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
how we do it.
So many coaches don't. And to
Yeah.
each their own, right? Like they have their own stuff and that's great. But I don't know how to do it without learning who the person is very deeply and personally and
Totally.
vulnerably sharing my story. Because it really has been
Mhm.
an uphill battle. And, I'm finally at a place where I'm like, okay, this makes sense. This feels good. Right. So I tell people, because how can I coach people if I don't really understand what they've been through or similar stories or about their core values and missing them? And I was missing all those things. So I feel
They
you.
Totally.
each spill into one another. I don't see how, I know on any given day what's coming up for me in my personal world or what's coming up in the world of my children or my husband that finds its way into the professional sector. So it's really helpful to find a way to marry them together and see how you can find. I think that's what allows you to find more of that sweet spot, that balance. But so much of what you both are saying is really hitting home for me, especially that calling. Like the three of us had that calling where
Yeah.
we were very successful being a leader or a professional working in a high stress environment, but that calling that there's something more combined with, I think, what makes us really relatable to the people that we're helping in our respective roles as coaches or mindfulness teachers is that we experienced, we can relate to the intensity, the anxiety, the stress. So
Yeah.
having experienced that firsthand, I know for me, having just recently stepped away from my role after 2 decades as a litigator to fully embrace my role as a mindfulness teacher, I can tap in, I can feel into that extreme sense of anxiousness. That's what brought me to mindfulness. That's what brought me to John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction program. But Rachel, something that you brought up in the workshop that I recently attended online with you, the joy activation workshop, I think as women who are high achieving professionals and top executives, there's this element that holds us back, and that is a lack of trust. Like you're
Mm.
sharing, Rachel, you had this calling, and the woman who you were working with was like, follow the lights. Was it the tea lights, right?
Yeah.
And
Follow the
Annie,
tea light.
you knew, Annie, like there's this calling, but I don't know if it was the same for both of you. But for me, even though this calling was so strong and I was turning to this one and that one, even most recently on the retreat, like looking to John Kabat-Zinn to like tell me what I need to do. But Annie and I talked about this recently on one of our episodes. The answer is within each of us, but it's like,
Oh yeah.
can we listen and can we trust ourselves?
Yeah.
Can we follow that light and have that inner trust to let it guide us? So I think that we can have all the credentials in the world and we can see this one and that one, but at the end of the day, it's tapping into our inner resources, one of
Yeah.
them being trust.
A
So
I
hundred
have to
percent.
piggyback onto that real quick. So this is what I teach a lot in my coaching. Lack of trust leads to one other thing. So, or having trust leads to one other thing, and it's safety. And that is truly because when you're truly safe, you reach freedom, right? When you're truly safe, and it
yeah,
doesn't mean safe in a not challenging yourself way, I am safe now in this place of, I know who I am safety,
Mm-hmm.
that you can't get to safety unless you have that trust, right? So it's like the end of the line for me is like, I have freedom tattooed on my arm. Like it's getting to freedom, but I had to be safe first to get to freedom,
hmm
right?
yeah.
So it's what you said exactly, and even more, like, because why do we trust, or why do we have lack of trust? Because we don't feel safe.
Oh
And
my
when
God, I
you
love
and from personal experience, when you feel safe and when you trust yourself, that level of freedom, it's like on steroids. Like it ends up radiating out in every which direction and inward. So yeah, I totally see the connection there.
Totally. I have a ball cap that says freedom on it, but the tattoo is even more baller, Annie. I love this. Oh my God. Yes, girl. Beautiful.
Yeah,
And they're
that's a
bold
pretty big
caps.
one for me because this is the first one my dad could actually see. Like, so I was like, honey, you're 43. Maybe it's okay to show the fact that you have a tattoo. Like
Oh my God, I
I
love
have
it.
two on my wrist. I was wearing sweatshirts for like, my son was like, "Take off your sweatshirt, mom. Aren't you hot?"
Oh my
I was
God.
like,
All
no,
kids are the same.
it's like 85 degrees at the shore.
I I respect you for that. I'm like a box of chocolates. I don't know what I'm gonna wake up to from one day to the next. One day I could really want that tattoo that's forever, and the next day I could be like, oh, I hate it. Like I don't
So
trust.
that's good that you know that though. That's really high awareness.
Yeah, talking about trust. Maybe it's awareness, because I was gonna say I don't trust myself to dive in to get that permanent tattoo. I've gotten the henna ones, and I've been like, okay, this is cool, and then I'm like, I want something
So
else.
that's how you'll know though. If you're
Yeah.
supposed to get one, you'll know when a word or something resonates with you so much. Like we had the calling, right? We were just talking about. You'll
Hmm.
know I have to have this. It's so important to me. Each one for me, I have four. Each one is a word. So because words are like my thing. So there's no pictures, it's just a word. And I knew as soon as that word came like upon me, it like came from like here. Like that night, I needed to have that with me the rest of my life. I couldn't have it some days and not. It's like that's when you know, like I don't say you have to get a tattoo. That's when you like when something has taken you over, you're like, if I don't do this, I'm just gonna like explode, right? Like that's how you felt with work. Like
Yeah.
this is calling me. I need this 100%. That's the same with a tattoo, at least for me. It's my experience.
I'm in Team Courtney. I've hennaed, but like I changed my jewelry, I changed my clothes, I changed my hair, my makeup. Like I'm like I would wait
Yes,
like
I love that awareness. I love that you're like, this is not, I don't know. I am just very decisive.
I,
I want to riff on something you said. I think safety is the basis of freedom and creating safety in the body. I have two things I want to riff on. Creating safety in the body is the basis of freedom for sure. And I think that's what my mindfulness practice does, my meditation practice does. Short practice before I go to bed, practice in the morning. It just creates that sense of safety. And when somebody comes to me for coaching, and they're in, there's varying levels of burnout. And another factor that I don't think a lot of people know is women are 1.5 more times to experience cognitive overload or burnout than men. 1.5 more times. That's a stat, I think, the Journal of Behavioral Medicine, that I quote in one of the workshops I teach. So when you're in a state of burnout, even if it's at a 2 or a 6 or an 8 or a 10, it can be more comfortable to stay in that state of burnout, which is really the opposite of freedom, than to
Yep.
get out of it. So it takes work. That's why a coach comes in to really shine a light and say, like, how do you want to be and where are you now and how can we get there? And all those modalities and tools we use, because staying in the opposite of freedom in that cycle of burnout, I think is really
Yep.
common. And then the other thing I love, and I was actually talking about this with my colleague, I coach half my time at an amazing coaching firm called Southern Group in Toronto. And I was talking to Jane Southern, the founder. We were doing a clay workshop last night, making clay. We were talking about giving up control. And Courtney, I love how you were talking about the conversation you had with John Kabat-Zinn at the retreat about what should I do next, and trusting that you have the inner knowing, you have everything you need to get there. And it's sometimes about giving up control. Like as the coach, you enter into a, 6, 9, 12-month coaching engagement with the client, and you're really giving up control. You're going to do everything you can, but you don't know where they're going to be in 12 months. And when you make a big career change, it's a giving up of control, and you need that to bridge those two thoughts together. You need that safety in your system to give up that control. But my God, when you give up the control, like the most wonderful things can happen.
not and and not so I think just sort of my hardwiring, just being type A personality, and then my conditioning through the work that I did as a litigator, we strive for everything to be just so. And getting back to what you said, we're very cognitive. We're constantly resolving. We're on the lookout for our opponent's move, and we're strategizing and we're fixing and all these things in our head, like figuring out what's next, or does this make sense? And so there was so much of that. But when I was able, especially on that retreat, when you're breaking away from the daily grind and your to-do list and caring for your family and caring for your clients, and you're just turning inward and you're feeling within the body, talking about somatic
Mm,
experience, like letting that guide you, letting that be the light, as opposed to our heads and having to follow our thoughts, which I know we've spoken about this, both Annie and Rachel, we've spoken about the inner narrative, but I don't think we really appreciate how much larger we are than the stories we
mhm,
tell ourselves. So the
mhm,
to getting back to that control, letting go of that control element, especially, which is really not, you think you're in control, but
Right, you're the opposite.
It's
we're not,
fake.
it's fake. We can make so many plans, and we know that, like, what we plan for today, let alone next week, there are so many moving pieces. But when you let go of that rigidity and when you drop in to the actual felt sensation within the body, there lies your answer. At least in my experience,
Mm.
hearing, and again, this was in a recent episode, hearing John read a poem by Derek Walcott called Love After Love, something like pierced through the heart, and the overwhelming warmth and clarity that I got within the body, right there was the answer. So yeah, I think it's as leaders, as executives, as people who are trying to put out fires and come up with solutions,
Oh
we are
yeah.
so in our heads that that control piece, it's very hard to let go of that sense of control and just let our next move or our next doing be a result of letting ourselves be and be with the actual sensation within the body.
Mm. I love
So
that.
when I started my coaching business, Rachel, I want to hear about yours if you have sort of like a framework or something that you
Yeah.
base your work on. I was like, there's a million coaches. How do I differentiate myself? Like, how can Annie be different? I know I'm different, right? So I created this framework because my first tattoo, I hate to keep talking about tattoos, it's the word
Mhm.
breath. Because it was a really bad time, and I looked over on the wall and there was a Ralph Waldo Emerson poem and it said something about breath. And like I turned on my heel and I was like, I need this on my body, like somewhere. The word breath, because you can take everything from me, but you can't take, right?
Mm.
The long story
Hmm.
short, 10 years later or 8 years later, when I created my coaching program, I based it on a framework called breath framework. So this has to do with exactly what you were just talking about, both of you. B is for begin where you are. R is for reclaim your power. E is excavate your core values. A is allow, meaning allow, not control. T is
Mm.
through, and H is heal. And it's like exactly what you're saying. When we get, and it doesn't necessarily have to go in order for everybody, but when we get to that allow piece and that acceptance piece, that's when you sort of get to the ability to go through and then to heal, right? And then to get to freedom, which is my ultimate goal for people. Just to
Oh
get
yeah. There's no going around your shit. You have to go through it.
you have to,
And it's just key and
most
keep.
people try to go around.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
just going to keep coming up and you're going to get more triggered and it's just going to keep
Yep.
coming up. You have to go through it. And I love, Courtney, what you riffed on a minute ago about you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. Me, almost 15 years ago, that woman just riddled with anxiety sitting in that therapist's office. I was not that anxiety. I was the watcher of the anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I sense the anxiety. I am me. And I think that can be translated to somebody who has limiting beliefs or, a story they're told because of whatever, early experiences, workplace trauma, what have you. Everybody has their wounds. When you can watch your thoughts and begin
Yeah.
to watch your sensations and realize you are not them, that's, I mean, freedom is such a theme for us this afternoon, ladies.
Right.
That's when like freedom and integration can really come in and you can start to make shifts and changes because so often people are on autopilot and they're
Yeah.
just defined by what they're thinking and what they're feeling, whereas you're actually the watcher of it. Your conscious mind is the watcher of it.
And it's
We
like, why do these things keep happening to me? Why is it the same stuff? I keep ending up with the same kind of man. I keep ending up with the same kind of job. Well, because you are stuck. You're stuck
yeah.
in
Yeah,
those limiting beliefs and those feelings and thinking that you're that's you. And to your point, it's not you.
Oh my God, I have to share one thing that just came through, but it's challenging. Like I remember, and we're not taught this in school or as children. We're not taught how to be this way. Most of us aren't. And I remember right when I was like, I had done coaching and I had been coached as a coachee and I had, done some training and traveled and done all these workshops and was doing my accreditation. And I said to one of my teachers, I said, I feel like I'm walking around naked. Like I feel like I'm
So
so
exposed.
exposed
Yeah.
because I don't have all these. I started to peel back the layers of who I thought I was, my value, because I had this big important job and like
Title.
my ego feeders. And I was like, I feel like I'm walking around naked. And they were like, you're gonna get used to it. You're on the right path. But it's an interesting sensation when you do this work
Yes.
and you become a teacher in this space.
The I love I love the just sort of naming that we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions. When in the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, as participants get further into the 8-week program, we begin with some of the foundational formal meditations, one being the body scan, and then we move on to the awareness of breath. And generally, or over time, we get into meditations that aren't just, we're just isolating our attention on the breath or the body. We get into what's known as an expanding awareness. And when we dive into observing our thoughts, it's really interesting for people because we to help them, we use this image almost as if you were sitting on the bank of a river or a stream, and you're looking in the river or the stream, and you see your thoughts like the moving stream itself, or the water, or the leaf floating on the
Mm.
water. And rather than being like in the current, getting pushed and pulled by it, we can just kind of be, as you're saying, we could be an observer and see it and not have to get caught up in it or believe it. And that is such a powerful experience. It can be transformational because people, getting back to anxiety, we often say, I'm anxious or
Mm.
I'm stressed out. Like we become
The thing.
The
anxiousness itself.
sensation.
So when we can see it as just a part of the whole, and it's something that comes and goes, and it's not something that is here forever, we can just observe it without having to
Oh
like
yeah.
fight it or resist it. Just that, just being with it with kindness, with care, then you may notice a subtle shift. So I like that imagery where we're just like looking at it, watching the stream of consciousness, or the stream, our thoughts just sort of move,
I love
shifting.
that. And I love the metaphor of the river, of the stream, that current where it's like always moving, it's always going. There's always going to be another thought. There's always going to be
Yeah.
something else on the to-do list, and just allowing and witnessing it moving, and you don't have to grab every single one.
Yeah, John often refers to like a thought bubble, and you see
Mm.
one, another, and they pop pop pop. So they just sort of come and go. But
Real quick, Rachel, what was the book that you were
Mhm.
given when they said, come back in 6 months? Read this book, come back in six
Oh
months.
my God. It was
Sorry,
a
I'm putting you on the spot, but if you think of it, let me know because I'd
John
really like to.
Kabat-Zinn book. I'll look it up. It was a John Kabat-Zinn book. I'll look it up and I'll tell you.
it was probably, my guess is one of his most popular is Everywhere You Go, There You Are.
That's it. You
And
got
I
it.
always flip flop. I'm like, everywhere you are, there you go. Like I always flip flop, but that's one of his. I want to say it's an easier read. He has a bigger one that's more sort of like the scientific backing behind the MBSR
Yeah.
program
That's a
called.
good start, you're
That's a
saying. Like,
good
that's a
start,
good
but if
place
you
to.
really want to get into like the juicy sciencey stuff, he has Full Catastrophe Living, which I
Oh,
think
I
I
love
I
that.
think I've like highlighted the hell out of the thing, but it's
I love
so
that.
he's yeah, he's such a brilliant
His
guy.
parenting book is amazing too. It was my
Yeah,
first maternity leave, my second pregnancy. I read his parenting book that he wrote with his wife.
yeah,
Oh God, their vulnerability in that book.
yeah.
Like, I just love it, especially hers, if I may say, hers just like, oh, it struck me. I love that book.
Hmm.
I'm,
How
I'm
can
actually just like looking at it on Amazon right now. So,
Annie? I'll get you a copy. It's worth. It's an easy read, and it's a good read.
anyway,
Rachel, I wanted to ask you because I know you help and work together with a lot of leaders and leadership teams. Can you talk about a success story for one of the leadership teams that you've worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. I have the privilege of working with a lot of leaders and leadership teams. And there was one team that I worked with in California in the healthcare industry. So providers, like providers of health services. And I worked with the CEO and I worked with two people on her leadership team. We worked together over a year and it was transformative. I worked with them. I did a couple group sessions and then I mainly did one-on-one with everybody, which is once a month session with everybody. And they were able to really transform how they related to each other. They came in with a whole bucket of challenges, right? As any coaching client does. And they were able to transform over that year how they related to themselves, how they related to each other, how are they were communicating to the providers being, the nurses, the doctors. and really start to make some real transformations in terms of workplace culture and the patient experience, which increase patient retention. Like their stats in
Yeah,
terms
for
of
sure.
patient retention were fabulous. And somebody will often say to me, "Well, how could you coach them? You don't know anything about healthcare." And I'm like, "But I know how to coach, right?" Like that's the
Right, I
funny
know
thing.
about coaching.
I coached a partner in a law firm last week. I do not have a law degree, right? Like, but I'm a trained
With
coach.
life
So
degree.
I
exactly.
love I love that. And what I also love, I think it speaks volumes. When you get a leader like a CEO of a company who
Yeah.
embraces these modalities, these practices, I do believe that it works its way down. And that is an
Oh
awesome
yeah.
way to promote positivity in workplace environment, in the workplace culture, because it's one, not that it's, it's still great if there's an individual, like a constituent of a company who's really immersed in these practices. When it starts from the top and works its way down, I think that's how you see the most transformation, not only in the individual, but collectively with an organization, bringing in coaching and
You
mindfulness.
have
And
buy-in, right? You have buy-in. You don't have to sell what we're doing. You're like,
yeah,
this is what we're doing. And then they're already bought in and they're like, do your thing. There's like nothing better than that, right? Like,
Yeah.
yep.
I mean, I have to sell all the time because it's like I have to talk about my services, right? But like for
Yeah.
someone that's in a C-suite position that buys in and is like, I want you to start with me or my team,
Yeah.
whatever, I find that to be like the most fun because then I can just dig into what I know how to do.
And somebody who says, I don't have time for coaching, that's the person who really needs coaching, right? Like, everybody who can
Uh,
find an hour once a month. And like I've worked
Or
with,
therapy, coaching or therapy. I don't have time,
or I
right?
don't have
It's
time
like,
to meditate. Like the day, Courtney, we've laughed about this. We both have young kids. Like the days I don't think I have time to meditate, shit, those are the days I really need to take a
really
10
need to
minute.
focus. Yep.
I can attest to that. This week, I don't know. It's like you're in Canada, Rach. Annie
Yeah.
and I are in the Philly region. It's like dark and dreary,
Oh, it's horrible
and
out there.
on those mornings, I was in really comfy pajamas. Like your tendency is to just hit the snooze and be like, "Oh, I'll get to it later." But I know that those days when I say, or maybe I say I don't have time for it, that's when I can most benefit. That's when I most need these practices, and the benefits ripple out, because when I'm not in a good place, when I'm highly reactive, when I'm not aware of
Not
how,
everybody.
yeah, of how I'm talking to my husband or how I'm lashing out because my son forgot something for school, like it changes the dynamic. So getting back to that, the company, the healthcare leadership team that you
Yeah.
coached, when people can deepen their awareness, and in this case, it sounded like how they were communicating with one another, and
Yeah.
when that awareness piece, when you can really strengthen that within one individual, not to mention a whole team, it changes the dance in really powerful, magical ways in the workplace, and then they can carry that into their personal lives. It's a
Oh
win-win.
yeah. It totally ripples out. It
Yeah.
totally, absolutely ripples out. And I think one of the most dangerous things in an organization is when you've promoted somebody into a leadership role because they're good at what they do and they don't have those soft skills for leadership. Like that's one of the most dangerous things that you can do. Like
Yeah.
whether it's a hiring or a firing, an onboarding or an offboarding that's not done consciously and with intention or done very in a hurried way, like that impacts how somebody feels. One of the, one of the pieces that I think there's huge expectations in the world, in the professional world over the last 5 years in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, as there should be, as there should have been for the past 200 plus years. And there's nothing more, destructive to an organization if you have these incredible consultants in HR and diversity consultants creating this incredible programming or content or a speech or a learning opportunity, and then it's rolled out by a leader without empathy or
Mhm.
authenticity, or who's very triggered or closed off. And
Yeah.
that work, how in terms of how you bring somebody into an organization, how they leave, whether they're an administrative assistant, whether they're an SVP, it's so important in terms of workplace culture and workplace morale and engagement, particularly when we're so diverse and we're so complex, and everybody's hybrid right now, and will be for the foreseeable future.
Speaking of, well, sort of adding to what you're saying, the people in these high roles, like they could have all the programs, the DEI, they could have all the wellness resources there, but if they themselves aren't practicing, I
Yeah.
don't think it comes off as authentic, or at least they can't really connect more fully with themselves. Like there's a boundary that isn't really a skillful one. So what I love about you, I mean, a lot of things I love about you, but I follow you on Instagram and I see you weaving in throughout your day. Granted, your 4:30 or 5 a.m. practice might not be on your story on Instagram, but I see the
Sure.
different ways you weave this into your life, whether it's just breaking out music and dancing with your kids.
Yeah.
I'd love to share with, I know I've gotten a glimpse through the gram, but I'd love to get a little insight into the ways you incorporate what it is you teach with coaching and mindfulness, because in turn, I think that helps you to help all those that you do coach.
100%. First of all, I don't coach my husband. So if he's listening to this, I promise to stop coaching you because that drives him crazy. And all the coaches will like get that joke who are listening to this. Um, I think my practice is key. Like I'll share an example from today. I had my meditation practice today. And I also like, it's not perfect. I'm not sitting there with candles and incense on a beautiful silk cushion. Like I'm in my pajamas. I've told the kids to not bother me for 20 minutes. My 6-year-old will come in 3 times and I'll say again, please, mommy's having her practice. And for years I got frustrated and like, "Ugh." And now I'm like, oh, it's just part of the practice. That's
Mhm.
just part of the practice.
I love that.
That's just part of my practice today. And I'm annoyed. Okay, what's there? Oh, God damn it. Go downstairs and just be with your dad. Just give me this practice for 20 minutes. I have a busy day. I'm on this podcast today. I had clients all morning and,
Yeah.
but I incorporated it in the
Oh my
practice. I
God.
don't like, I don't tense up. And I mean, I was like that for almost 40 years. So I was really good at it. Now it's like integrating it. I incorporate it into the practice. I'm like, okay, what feeling is there? What sensation is there? I'm really frustrated. Allow it to be part of it. And then this morning, my oldest son forgot his glasses and I yelled at him. I was on the front porch. I'm sure the neighbors heard me. I was like, I told you to remember your glasses. I yelled at him. I'm not proud of that, but I could see it happening. And I did feel a sensation of embarrassment and shame when I went inside and I soothed it and I kissed him and said, have a great day. I'll see you at 4. But I could move through it so much quicker because I had that practice. I could move through things and see them like go up in the airplane and see what was happening, as opposed to being stuck in their tornado of the thoughts, oh my God, I shouldn't have yelled and I should have done something differently. Um, I also get really clear, and my husband and I get really clear, like we're coming up to the holiday season, like we really think about as a team, like we've been together almost 15 years. What's our goal for this year? Like, how do we want our family to feel? And like last year was a big year for us in terms of me really growing my business and my ICF certification, blah, blah, blah. And this next year, what I'm really feeling is like a lot of joy and a lot of like ease in the home and like also teaching my oldest son more independent, who's going to be 10. So I don't go into the weekend. I mean, I don't sit down and journal about what's going to happen on the weekend for the family because we all know life gets busy. But I think intentionally on my Thursday, Friday, okay, what energy do I want to have in my family this weekend? Like as the woman, we are the emotional regulators of everybody.
Oh my
So
God. You just, yes. Yes.
is it going to be like a silly Saturday morning? Are we going to have pancakes and I'm going to put on some like great house music? Yeah, go on my Instagram. You'll see me. There's a reel of me in like a pirate hat. How to Unwind is like the cover of the reel that my assistant put on to make me look more classy. And it's me like dancing with a wooden spoon the day after Halloween and listening to house music. And that was the actual audio. Like my husband's cooking and I'm dancing and like we bring the element of silliness. And for me, movement and dance and like a little bit of a shake or like having music really helps me shift from a great, thoughtful, intense day of coaching humans, sometimes through some significant stuff, to shifting into motherhood. So yeah, movement is key for me and intentionality of like what energy do I want my family to feel. And then other Saturday mornings, we got an 8 a.m. soccer game across town and it's like my alarm goes off and it's a different flow, but not just going in unconsciously, being mindful and intentional, but what do I want my family's experience to be like? What energy do I want to emanate today?
Love that so much. My husband, this is how crazy my life has been recently. I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday, but it was one of those. My husband came to my office door and he's like, you've been really really calm lately. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm not usually calm. No, I was like, thank you. Thank you for saying that. And he's like, no, he goes, we all feed off of Annie's energy. And I was like, I know
Yeah.
that sounds so simple, but I thought to myself, you know what? You guys really do. Like, so if I just want to do that, I'm learning so much just on this show. Like Rachel, I want to be like, when I wake up, I want to say, like, what do I want to bring to today?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
energy do I want? You know, what do I want to bring? And I think that's so important because that's, like you said, intentionality, right? Like, it's
Mm,
not just bring it and be all over. And it's just like, you know what, today I'd like to bring a little more order. Today I'd like to bring a little more silliness. Today I like,
yeah,
and like we are the matriarchs, right? Like we're the
totally.
epicenter, like we're the, and we look, it's not always the woman. I don't say it like that, but we are the workhorse in a way where like we run
Mhm.
stuff, right?
In
And
a
like,
male-female dynamic partnership, it often is like, yeah,
I
absolutely. And
mean,
I've coached over 200 women this year in group one-on-one and in events, and I think it often is. You're right.
I don't know how anyone would do anything, frankly. I'm not really sure how anyone would do anything. If it wasn't for me, if I'm honest, I know it would go on. Like I'm not that important, but like you said, like I'm going to bring that. I'm going to think of you. Two things. I'm going to bring intentionality in the morning. How do I want today to go? And
Yeah.
have manifest. And I love it's just part of the practice. I love that when people walk by when I'm working, I'm always like, they don't respect my work. Like my work doesn't mean as much as yours. And I'm like, why can't I just step back and say, it's just part of my job. Like it's just part of my life. Like it's boys,
Yeah.
it's young boys, it's my husband, they're talking too loud in the kitchen, which is over there. Like that's just part of life, right? So you
Totally.
taught me those two things that I want to bring into my world. Starting today.
Mm,
Thank you.
yes. I love it.
I say our lives are really our laboratories for practicing mindfulness. Like the
Ooh.
easy part, and not always, because like you're saying, Rachel, I could set my alarm clock for 4:30 to sit on my meditation cushion, and every time I feel like every time I say it's going to go this way, there's some type of interruption, and that's just how it goes that day. But can we allow our lives to be the platform to practice? That's the
Yeah.
trickier part. Can we just be with whatever is coming up?
Yeah.
So and I love intentionality, like set an intention and manifest it, baby. Like
Totally.
let it come to fruition.
Or else it's like you're going to an amusement park and you're not even picking the rides. You're just getting on whatever damn ride is in front of you. Like you want to be intentional about what you're getting on and
Yeah.
what you're doing. Yeah.
And
Thank you.
one more thing that's like coming, for me is like presence, right? Like part of the practice is being present and knowing it's there and it's part of your practice, it's part of your day, right? And like
Yeah.
that's why in my framework, heal is not healed because we're never healed, right? We're always evolving, we're always
Mm,
healing. And so you're present when you heal. And so to me, when you say like set your intention, it's like we're present in that intention versus our
totally.
minds are always ahead, behind, somewhere
Mhm.
else other than present.
I love that. I'm going to offer you one more nugget, Annie, and you can leave it or
Okay.
you can take it. I recently, this last year in my practice in my business, I've shifted away from using the word heal, and I often will pull in the term integrate. We're integrating.
I did hear
We're
you use that earlier.
Yeah, we're just integrating this. So this thing, this thought, this trigger, this da 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 da, we're just going to integrate it. And it's like you're opening up your arms, you're open with like a blanket or a shawl, and you're just integrating all of you, all your parts, everything. That 6-year-old who's opened the door for the third time in my meditation practice this morning. Oh my God. Like we're just allowing it to be as it is. We're just integrating it.
Six, like he or
Um,
she, he's six, right? Like he's only going to be
yeah,
six once. I know it's easy to say from here because I'm annoyed all the time, but like he's not going to do that in 10 years. He's not.
yeah,
He's not going to do it in 5 years. And it's like,
totally.
you're so right. Like he's just six.
Yeah, and life's our greatest teacher. Like I love that term, Courtney, of life being our laboratory. Like life is our greatest teacher in the same ways our kids are our greatest teacher. The people who are challenging in our life for us, the mean person in the line at the grocery store, the person in front of you, that person in your life that you have awkward conversations with, they're just teachers, just allowing them to be your teachers and having enough safety in your system to see that.
And getting back before we end, getting back to what Annie said, it comes back to the awareness piece, like
Yeah.
noticing if we're sort of resisting what experience we're having, because that's when we create suffering. When we can put out, as you're saying, Rachel, embrace it, put out the welcome mat, let it all be here, let
Yeah.
yourself be with it. That's when we can find ways to support ourselves with it all and with joy.
Yes.
So, Rachel,
Aside from saying monkey glue last time, this is my favorite show we've done. I mean, I liked when I said monkey glue because it was so me. And I'm like, but this was my favorite show we've done because it so resonates with me, and having your presence
Mhm.
and just talking, we're just going around and having a conversation. This is my favorite type of show because we
Let's
just
do it
flow,
again.
and
See,
yeah,
I
and I
told you,
get it.
Annie. I said I found the coolest. I found the, well, I can't say the coolest coach, but I found your match, Annie.
I'm telling you, we could talk
Cool
everything you
fact.
say. I'm like, wait, oh, I have a client in 3 minutes.
Yeah, I want
Um,
to, before we end, I just want to share with our audience, Rachel, if a company or an individual would love to connect with you and
Yeah.
explore coaching, can you let me know how they can connect with you?
I would be delighted to connect with anybody. So I offer corporate leadership coaching to executives, to leaders. And then I also offer twice a year an incredible group coaching experience for women called the Empowerment Club. And I have another round starting in March. It's a twice a month program that really helps women, whether you're a traditional leader or not, regulate your nervous system and just step into really leading in your life. It's an amazing group
how long
coaching
is that
program.
program?
It's 4 months. 4 months. It starts in March. Yeah, called the Empowerment Club. So, rachelbarbaro.com. Find me at rachelbarbaro.com or on Instagram or on LinkedIn. And I would love to connect and chat.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I hope that you have a great rest of the week.
No,
Your time here has been invaluable. I know I've learned a lot. Annie has
no.
shared, she's really appreciated, and I look forward to continuing the discussion on a future episode. So thank you so much.
Amazing. Thanks,
Hi, girls.
everybody.
See you
Mwah.
soon. Bye.